Namaste. Hi there, I'm Courtney, and I'm thrilled to be taking you on this journey of Yoga Nidra. This is a practice that can radically transform your life in so many ways, not only on the physical level, but the emotional and spiritual as well. So let's dive right in with a little practice. It's a breathing technique called heart rate variability. And so you'll just start seated. So find yourself in a comfortable seat. Take a few moments to shift the body and arrange yourself so that your sit bones are grounded and your spine is long. If you'd like, your hips can be lifted a little bit on a cushion or a block, on a pillow. Let the knees drop down a little bit lower than the hips. You can also sit in a chair. That's perfectly fine as well. So this heart rate variability practice is to slow down the breathing. The goal is to bring us into the parasympathetic nervous system. So we'll slow down the breath, ultimately lower than 7 breaths per minute. And if you're curious later, you can time yourself what your normal breathing rate is, and then practice this heart rate variability breath to see if you're able to slow that normal breathing rate down even just a little bit. So as you inhale, you'll inhale to about 4 or 5 counts. And then as you exhale, you'll exhale to a little bit longer, maybe 5 to 7 counts for the exhalation. So what we'll do first then is we'll slow down the breath by making the exhale longer than the inhale. And this effectively stimulates the dorsal vagal nerve from the coccyx to the brain stem, which in turn activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So this vagal nerve runs again from the coccyx all the way to the brain stem. And through this slowed down exhalation, then we crank on that parasympathetic, that rest and digest system. And it's in this system that healing is able to take place. Okay. The next step of our heart rate variability technique is to remove the pause between the inhale and the exhale, and between the exhale and the inhale. So if you've been practicing yoga for a while and you have practiced the kumbhaka or the breath hold, now in this kind of breathing technique, I want you to take that kumbhaka completely out. So as soon as you've exhaled all the breath out, immediately turn it into the inhalation. Okay? And when you're counting your exhale and inhale, well, the count will help you know that you've removed that pause, if there was one. The counting also gives the left brain something to focus on. So we're activating both hemispheres of the brain, which is also a huge component of our Yoga Nidra practice. The parasympathetic nervous system opens up the right brain, okay? And then we have our left brain doing the counting. So in that way, both sides are activated. Okay? You'll know that you have shifted your system. So you'll know that you have shifted into the parasympathetic nervous system because you may feel that your hands get hot or heavy or maybe a little bit tingly. Your bottom lip may tingle or feel numb. You may feel a tingling sensation in the spine. So remember, we have these nadis that move through our body. And of course, that central channel along the spine is called the shushumna. And so you may, when you get into the parasympathetic response, you may feel a tingling sensation straight up that section, that center channel of the spine. You may feel your whole body crawling or tingling. You may feel a sensation of fullness, of expansiveness. And you may feel the pranic energy body come online. So you may feel the prana, the energy, actually moving in the body. Okay. Your homework will be to practice this heart rate variability. We'll practice it for a few minutes now, but then I'll ask that you go and practice this on your own and begin to time the response of your body to this practice. So what I mean by that is notice how long it takes you from normal state of consciousness where the brain is active. Maybe you're in like a beta or a high beta state, which we'll talk about later, until you start to feel these signs, these symptoms that the parasympathetic nervous system is on, the vagal nerve has been stimulated. So again, you'll feel the hands hot, heavy, tingly, the bottom lip may be numb or tingly. You may feel that tingling sensation in the spine, or the whole body may feel this fullness or this thickness. And maybe if you're familiar with your pranic energy bodies, then you may experience those as well. So notice how long it takes for you to begin experiencing these signs, this proof that the parasympathetic nervous system is now online. And as you do the practice, continue to time it, because one of the beautiful things that Yoga Nidra does for us is teaches us and trains us how to turn off that fight or flight response, how to bring the body back into homeostasis after a threat or a stressful situation. Okay, so let's begin this practice. So sit up straight. When you feel ready, close down the eyes. And let the whole body sink down into the seat. Feel a drooping from the crown of the head down the sides of the head, the face and back of the head. Feel the skin begin to slouch. The neck rests heavy on the shoulders. The skin of the shoulders pours down the arms. The spine resting now, vertebra on top of vertebra, and all of it settling into the seat. Release any expression that you might be holding in the face, any expectation that might be being held in the mind. And then notice the breath. The breath is soft and gentle, cool as it enters. Don't place any control over it just yet. Just watch in admiration the breath. And now with the natural breath, just notice, begin to count the inhalation. Maybe it's a count of 4 or 5. And as you exhale, add 1 or 2 counts. Now remove any pauses between the inhale and the exhale. Let the exhaled breath flow smoothly into the inhale. Continue counting the inhale and adding a couple of counts for the exhale. Let any muscular tensions melt and stay focused on the counting of the breath. Notice any changes in sensation you may be experiencing in the body now. And continue for a few more breath cycles. And as you feel ready, Come grounded back into the seat and slowly blink open the eyes, looking down the tip of the nose. And then coming back to full awareness. You may pause the video here and jot down some notes and responses to how the body feels with this heart rate variability exercise. And now we will go ahead and begin the presentation about Yoga Nidra. Let's get right into the presentation then. So here's the beginning of Yoga Nidra. This is a 60-hour module of the 300-hour Gypsy Yoga School module. And the first slide I have here is a quote from Swami Satyananda Saraswati. And he, of course, is the one who wrote this book that is guiding the practice of modern Yoga Nidra. So he's the Swami who went back into the ancient texts and brought these different practices together to develop this modern system of Yoga Nidra that we teach and practice today. And so here's a quote from his book. The practice of Yoga Nidra is the scientific method of removing tensions. And as we move through this presentation, you will see that it is in fact very much so backed by scientific evidence. And there has been a lot of research on Yoga Nidra itself as a practice for calming the mind. So, what is Yoga Nidra? Let's take a look first at the etymology of the word. So the word yoga, we know, comes from the root word yoke. What are we yoking or combining here? We're merging with the unified consciousness. So the state of yoga is when the individual consciousness merges with the cosmic consciousness. Yoga is also a science of practical tools which refine the nervous system to facilitate that connection. So we could say that yoga is both a state, according to the Yoga Sutras, the state of a calm mind, or the state of being one with pure consciousness. And we can also say that yoga is a science of tools that refine our nervous system and help to facilitate that connection. Okay, what's the word Nidra? The word Nidra simply means sleep. And so when we put these two words together, Yoga Nidra, it's the state of dynamic sleep, or the state of conscious sleep. If we're looking at Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga, then we know that Yoga Nidra is a pratyahara technique. It is a technique to bring our externally focused awareness, all of our sense faculties of sight and hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling inward to experience the Atman, to experience the self. So pratyahara, remember pratyahara, so if you go back to your 8 limbs of yoga, we have yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Pratyahara is the 5th step of Patanjali's Ashtanga, or the 8 limbs of yoga. So that's where the Yoga Nidra practice falls. So it's a practice of bringing the senses inside to observe, to witness the internal state. And so we could say that although we're turning all of our senses inward except for our sense of hearing, so in the beginning when we're learning Yoga Nidra, we maintain the sense of external hearing because it's in an effort to um, train the practitioner, train the student to stay present even in slower or quieter brain states. So, slower brain waves, quieter brain states. And so, this practice of still maintaining that sense of hearing keeps us present as we relax deeper and deeper. Okay, and the other point to make here about pratyahara is, we have this external focus of our senses, right? We go from this sort of object focused awareness to awareness of centeredness. So we find our center by turning the senses inward. And so the inner senses then that we are using, that we're referring to, are claircognizance or the inner knowing, clairvoyance or inner seeing, clairaudience or inner hearing, and clairsentience or inner feeling. So we still use those senses, but to experience that deeper inner state. Finally, what is Yoga Nidra? Yoga Nidra is a state of consciousness where we bring our brain waves from the active thinking beta brain state to a more relaxed alpha brain wave state, and maybe eventually beyond, so to even slower brain waves. So this is a state of consciousness, a state of witnessing. And as a state of consciousness, we're bringing in sense information through our five senses, and then we process those experiences as positive or negative, and we create these attachments or affinities for certain things and aversions to other things. And so when these impressions are brought to our attention in an intentional way, when our brain waves are slower, so there's no reactive state anymore, then these stored impressions without any emotional charge can turn into higher wisdom. So Yoga Nidra brings us more and more to a state of equanimity by bringing up impressions when we're not in a reactionary state, because our brain waves are calmer. And so these impressions, these thoughts, these feelings that we have in the waking conscious beta sort of brain state, when they're refused, so when we deny or shove these experiences or these feelings, that's when they become sort of problematic in our life. And so then what happens is because we're refusing them, they're staying in our unconscious state. And then we're just sort of projecting them blindly into the world. And so Yoga Nidra brings us to a state where we can investigate these belief systems, these latent impressions that in so many ways define our personal identity and our reality. Okay? Yoga Nidra will take us into this witness perspective, into metacognition, where we can become aware of what's going on inside of us. We can observe our way of being without any reaction. And once we can observe our state of being without the reaction, then that's when we become the creators, the co-creators of our reality, because we are co-creating with that supreme consciousness. And that's when we begin to shape our reality. So Yoga Nidra helps us to bridge the external realm with the internal pure consciousness. Yoga Nidra takes us on a journey through the koshas, through the subtle layers of our being, to explore the question, who am I? It takes us progressively from the external Annamaya kosha, the physical body, all the way to the most subtle energy level. What is Yoga Nidra? So the signature of Yoga Nidra is a transformational as well as a transcendental experience. And so what does that mean? Well, it's a transformational experience because it's preparing the practitioner to internalize awareness, right? So it's a practice that teaches us how to become conscious of the unconscious. Okay, so it's a practice in the sense that it has a beginning, a middle point, and an ending point, and it's transformational because it changes a person, because it helps us to become conscious within the subconscious and in the unconscious levels of our awareness. And it's transcendental because it enables us to access the unchanging. It enables us to access the unseen, okay, the unmanifest, the Brahman, the pure consciousness, and consequently arrive at the perfect state of being. How do we know when we're in a Yoga Nidra state? There are 3 signposts that, according to my teacher, Tanis Fishman, as to when you know that you're in a state of Yoga Nidra. So the first signpost is that you are no longer aware of space. The second is that you are unaware of time, how much time has passed, what time it is. And the third is that you become disconnected from the ahamkara, which is the I maker, the ego. There's no longer this sense of a separate identity. So you become disconnected with the roles and the attachments that define who you are. That's all for this lecture. Next time, we'll look at the history and lineage of Yoga Nidra. So let's sit straight, and we'll close with one Om. Namaste.